Hi! If you Google around the world stringing, you'll find a bunch of techniques related to this topic. The one thing in common about this stringing technique is that it uses one piece of string and the crosses are installed from the top of the head to the bottom. I developed an around the world technique about 28 years ago and have been using it since. In this video, I'll share my twist on the around the world technique. All right, let's get started. All right, so before I get started, I did want to make a note here that you need to have swivel clamps on your stringing machine in order to use this around the world technique. In fact, that's true for most around the world patterns. And I also only use this for synthetic gut or natural gut. If I'm stringing with polyester, I find it's easier to stick with the traditional two-piece stringing. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure enough string, and I did a video where I did this, use this technique, and there'll be a bunch of videos and I'll post all the links in the video description below. So I'm on 4. All right, so I got 7 there. And I'm also gonna measure enough string for the top 2 crosses. So this is where my technique is a little bit different from others. So I'm gonna run the string through and get that measurement. I'm holding it with my thumb here and get it to the top. And that's gonna be the starting point. So I'll basically be stringing 7 mains and 2 of the top crosses, and then the rest of the racket with the long end of the string. All right, so I'm just gonna keep, I'll cut a tip on this side, and I'll just let it stay right there. So I'm gonna start the mains using the Yusuke method. So as I mentioned, this is synthetic gut. I'm stringing at 56 pounds. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna install 2 of the mains. It'll be on the right side of the racket. And then I'll go back to the other side. The guideline is you never wanna string more than 3 strings over the other side. So what I do is I do 2, and then now I'm gonna go back to the left side of the racket. And I'm actually gonna do 4. So by doing 4, it's only gonna go 2 over the other side. So that's still within the 3 alternate main string installation. So that's the guideline set by the USRSA. So if you're ever taking the USRSA certification test, you might want to keep that in mind. So this is the second one on the left side. So again, I'm gonna install 4 before going back to the other side. And I'll keep repeating that process till I reach the outer mains. All right, so that's number 4 on the left side. So I am gonna go back to the right side and do 4. So that'll bring it to a total of 6. And this short side for this particular racket could have been on either side, so it didn't really matter. When you're dealing with a racket that has specific holes for the tie-off on the cross strings, you need to pay attention to that, where you're gonna place the short side so that you can end up tying off appropriately. So yeah, there's a little bit of planning when you have to string those type of rackets that have specific grooves on the racket where you have to install those crosses. All right, so this is number 5. This is number 6, so I'm going to stop here and jump back to the left side of the racket. finish installing all the mains because that'll bring it up to 8. This pattern is a 16-19 string pattern. So this is the 8th main coming down. And before having this machine, I would typically use a starting clamp on the outside to secure this, hold that string. But with this machine, since it can go 360, I will be using my string clamp instead. All right, so I'm just gonna leave that there. So this string coming up here is the 7th main coming up. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place the string clamp so that I have room to clamp the 2nd cross and the 1st cross. So this is where the this pattern is a little bit different. So I am going to the 2nd. And the reason for that is to help reduce the string friction that can occur in the 10 and 2 o'clock area of the frame. So on this particular frame, I'm gonna go to the 2nd. Sometimes I'll go to the 3rd cross. And I did a video, install crosses faster and reduce friction. So if you check out that video, you'll see when I go to 2 or 3. So this is the 2nd cross. And I'm gonna just bring this clamp over because it can move this way since it's 360, which is nice. All right, so this is the top cross. I'm gonna apply the knot function for this top cross here. Oh, and it didn't matter that I went above or below on that first string, but it's gonna be important when you come down here, which I'll show you. All right, so tie off here. Okay, so we got that done. Now we're gonna come back down here. So this is where this is different also. So I'm not gonna run this cross at the bottom, like the 19th cross. It'll actually be the 18th, but what is important is that you weave it appropriately so in the end, it'll match up. So the way I can, it's easy to remember is since this is 19 crosses, which is an odd number, you're always going to weave it opposite. So both words start with O, odd, opposite. But what you have to do is look for a common string. So what I'm going to do is, let's take a look at this string right here. This is a common string that'll be running through, this string has to be, that I'm going to be weaving the string opposite. Sorry. So this one over here is under. So I'm going to make sure that this one is over. So I'm going to go under and then over right there. So it's opposite because it's an odd number of crosses. And again, this is the second to the last cross. It's not the last cross. And I'll explain later why I'm doing that. So, oh, and if it's an even number, like a 1618 or 1820, then the way I remember is the letter E. Just remember exactly the same. So odd, opposite, and even, exactly same. All right, because believe me, I've made my share of mistakes when I either miscounted or I just I misweaved that one, so I had to start all over. So you don't want to have that happen to you. All right, so I'm running the last main here, and what I'm gonna do is leave. I'm gonna position this clamp so I have room for these two crosses, because I am going to use the one ahead technique. So I want to make sure I have room for that clamp. All right, so you're just going to weave pretty much down to the bottom of the frame like normal. And the reason why I don't usually use this technique for polyester is that there's a lot of friction buildup right at the 10 and 2. So especially if it's a shaped polyester or something that's textured. So yeah, I would typically just use this for synthetic or natural gut. All right, so I'm coming over here. This is the one ahead technique that I'm using right here. Oh, and the reason why the around the world technique has you're weaving basically from the top of the head to the bottom is that the frame is the strongest point of the frame is in this yoke or throat area. So when you're weaving the crosses down, you want to make sure that the racket is supported by the throat versus if you're coming from the bottom up, this is actually the weaker part of the frame. So it wouldn't be able to support the kind of stress as you're tensioning the string. So that's typically why you would use an around the world pattern. And again, it's whenever the mains end up at the bottom of the frame. All right, so I have my untensioned string here, so I can start using the one ahead technique. Now there's another video that I posted where you always want to weave this string, but weave or tension with a small loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an example of that right now. So I want to leave enough string here of a loop. So I don't know if you can see that, but it reaches the tension head right there. And so that allows you to pull most of the string through the mains while it's still in that one ahead position. So what I mean by that is, well, I'll show you an example of what I see some stringers do is that they'll weave their string through and leave it like that. Now I have this big loop of string right here. And so if I apply tension now, all right, so now what you have is this string, this loop over here, this big loop that I'm now pulling with a lot more friction now because you don't have that untensioned string that's one ahead. So again, I posted a video versus, I think it was titled using the one ahead technique with a small loop. So yeah, you can check that out. All right, I'll point out another thing here. And as you tension each string, you always want to make sure that the string is held in a straight line. So I have my tension about to be applied here. So with my other hand, I'm always going to hold it so it stays in a straight line. And that's for optimum tensioning. And I did another video called Optimum Tensioning of the cross string. So again, you can check that out, out in the link below. All right, I'll point out one more thing before I reach the bottom here. So again, here's my small loop, just enough to reach the tension head, holding the strings in a straight line. Now the other thing that I'm doing is I don't know if you can see this, but I'm always holding the end of the string. So that'll allow me to find the end really quickly without, if I dropped it to the ground, then I have to search for it. So I'll just weave it through. And then after I weaved it through, I'll just hold on to it and never let go of the tip. So I have my So there's another video called Time Saving Tips. So let me, okay, so let's say if I did weave the string, and as I get down to the end, I have a less of a length, but let's say if I just let it go, right? So I'm just gonna let it go. All right, so now I have to go searching for it by bringing it up to my hand again. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and weave this. I got a couple more strings to weave here before I can point a couple of other things out. What's typical about the around the world technique is that you're always going to have a hard weave followed by an easy weave. And so what I mean by that is right now, let's go through here. Yeah, this would be an easy weave because the two tension strings are the same right now. So sliding this through is like really easy. But then it's going to be followed by the next string, which will be a little bit harder. So that's another reason why I rather not use this technique for polyester strings, because of the fact that you're going to encounter that hard weave every other string. So yeah, so this one has a little bit more resistance. I have to like push it up and down, whereas the easy weave, I could just slide it right through. And I also did another video on how to handle hard weaves. And I am gonna start getting into that hard weave when we get to the bottom here. So, all right, so we're almost there. And I have a lot of string length left. So what I'm gonna do to reduce the amount of string that I'm handling, I'm just gonna measure it out using the Racquet. So I just have 3 more crosses to do. I have 1, 2, 3. And I want to leave enough string length to reach the tension head, so I'm going to cut it off at this point. There's about a couple feet there. I actually did cut off 3 feet when I started the Racquet because this came out of a string set, just to kind of reduce that length. All right, so this was definitely an easy weave, and that's a good sign because you want that easy weave to be, I mean, you want it, yeah, I have 1 more string to go, and that has to be a hard weave between these 2 strings. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply the tension there. All right, so on this one, I'm gonna go ahead and tension. It's not gonna be 1 ahead anymore. So I'm gonna apply the tension on this string. All right, so this is definitely going to be a hard weave, and what I'm going to do is use a different technique in weaving. I call it the stitching technique. So basically you're just going to push it up and down, and there's a lot of drag or a lot of tension that's going to happen on this string. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and pull it at this point and then just weave the second half of it. So if you have a hard time, you can just do 1 string at a time like this and just do that for this 1 string. And again, I have this technique on that video, how to handle hard weaves. All right, so this string, because it's between 2 tension strings, I'm gonna actually double pull this. So I'm gonna pull it once, release it, and then pull it a second time, just to get a little bit more tension on that string and make sure that it's gonna come as true as possible. All right, so now we're down at the bottom, and this is where I'll do the last cross. So by doing it this way, by having the second to the last one already installed, tying this off, and then, weaving this, then tying it off, there is gonna be a little tension loss in this because of the fact that you're tying off. So that eliminates this second to the last cross string from being loose. And I'll provide a picture where it can actually look a little bit wavy, and you can really feel the tension just by pulling on with your fingers. So I'm gonna go ahead and come down to this last cross and finish this off here. Then I'll use the knot function. And then tie off right here. So I did want to do a quick review on the 3 reasons or the benefits of this technique. One, I did reduce the string friction in the 10 and 2 o'clock areas of the frame. 2, by skipping or going to this cross and coming down here as the last weave. I eliminated that loose second, the loose cross string. And 3, I have consistent tensioning on these 2 because these were tied off, and then of course these 2 because they were never tied off. So I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching. Happy I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks for watching. Happy stringing. And let your strings play.